Alina Carter pressed her fingertips against the cool glass window of the limousine, watching the city lights blur into golden streaks. The charity gala, her father insisted she attend, loomed ahead like an obligation she couldn't escape. Past 6 months, every smile had felt forced, every conversation a performance. Carter Industries was drowning, and she was expected to keep swimming as if nothing was wrong. The grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns. Alina smoothed down her emerald dress and stepped inside, immediately scanning for familiar faces. Her best friend Rebecca waved from across the room, champagne glass raised in greeting. "You actually came," Rebecca said, pulling Alina into a quick embrace. "I thought you'd bail last minute." "Dad wouldn't let me," Alina admitted, accepting a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter. "Said I need to maintain appearances." Rebecca studied her friend's tired eyes. "When's the last time you did something just for yourself?" Before Alina could answer, the crowd shifted, and she felt suddenly overwhelmed by the noise, the heat, the expectations pressing down on her shoulders. "I need air," she whispered. The hotel's rooftop terrace offered a welcome escape. The autumn breeze carried the scent of rain, and the city stretched out below like a sea of possibilities. Alina leaned against the railing, finally allowing her mask to slip. Running away from the party or toward something better? The voice was deep, warm, tinged with amusement. Alina turned to find a man standing in the shadows, hands in his pockets. Even in the dim light, she could see he was striking, tall, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, wearing an expensive suit that somehow looked casual on him. "Just needed a moment of honesty," Alina replied. "Everything in there feels fake." He stepped closer, and she caught a glimpse of gray eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls. "I know exactly what you mean." They talked for over an hour. He never mentioned his name, and she never asked. They discussed books, travel, childhood dreams they'd abandoned, the weight of family expectations. For the first time in months, Alina felt like herself, not the daughter trying to save a sinking company, not the perfect image her family needed her to project. "Want to get out of here?" he asked, his voice low and intimate. Every rational thought told Alina to say no. But she was tired of being rational, tired of carrying everyone else's burdens. "Yes," she whispered. The morning after sunlight filtered through unfamiliar curtains. Alina blinked awake, her body warm and relaxed in a way she hadn't felt in forever. The hotel room was elegant, minimalist, impersonal. She turned her head to find the other side of the bed empty, sheets cool to the touch. On the nightstand sat a single note written in neat handwriting. "Thank you for last night. Take care of yourself." No name, no number. Just a memory of connection that already felt like a dream. Alina dressed quickly, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to feel regret, but she couldn't. That night had been hers, a moment stolen from the chaos of her life. She tucked the note into her purse and left. 6 weeks later, the nausea hit Alina halfway through her morning coffee. She barely made it to the bathroom, gripping the sink as her stomach rebelled. This had been happening for days now, along with exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. Rebecca noticed immediately when they met for lunch. "You look pale. Are you sick?" "Just stressed," Alina lied, pushing food around her plate. But that night alone in her apartment, she couldn't ignore the calendar anymore. She drove to a pharmacy. 3 neighborhoods away, bought the test with cash, and took it in a gas station bathroom because she couldn't bear to wait. 2 pink lines appeared almost instantly. Alina slid down the wall, sitting on the cold tile floor, the positive test clutched in her shaking hands. She was pregnant. The father was a man whose name she didn't know, whose face she could barely recall in detail, but whose touch she remembered with crystal clarity. "The meeting, Alina, are you listening?" Her father's sharp voice pulled her back to the present. They sat in the conference room at Carter Industries headquarters, surrounded by financial reports that all told the same story. Bankruptcy loomed, unless they found a partner. "Blackwood Enterprises agreed to meet with us," her father continued. "They're our last option." Alina's stomach twisted, though whether from morning sickness or dread, she couldn't tell. Blackwood Enterprises had been their competitor for decades. The company that had slowly absorbed their market share. The name her father cursed at dinner tables. "Why would they help us?" Alina asked. "Because Julian Blackwood is apparently different from his father. He's looking for legitimate partnerships, not hostile takeovers. Her father's voice carried skepticism. We meet with him tomorrow. That night, Alina couldn't sleep. She lay in bed with her hand resting on her still flat stomach, wondering how she'd raise a child while watching her family's legacy crumble. Face to face, the Blackwood Enterprises building was all glass and steel, modern and cold. Alina followed her father into the executive conference room, her heels clicking on marble floors. She'd dressed carefully, a navy suit that projected confidence she didn't feel. Her hair pulled back in a severe bun. The door opened, and her heart stopped. He stood there, the man from the terrace. From that night that had changed everything. But now, he wore authority like a second skin, his gray eyes sharp and focused as he extended his hand to her father. Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. I'm Julian Blackwood. Alina felt the blood drain from her face. Julian, the mysterious stranger, who'd given her one perfect night, was Julian Blackwood, heir to their family's greatest rival, the man who now held her company's fate in his hands. Their eyes met across the conference table. Recognition flashed in his gaze, followed quickly by shock, then something darker and more complex. He knew, he remembered. And this is my daughter Alina, her father was saying. She handles our partnerships and acquisitions, Miss Carter. Julian's voice was professionally neutral, but his hand trembled slightly when she shook it. It's a pleasure to meet you. The lie hung between them, heavy with implications neither could address. Alina withdrew her hand quickly, her pulse racing. As her father began presenting their situation, Alina tried to focus on the numbers. The proposals, the future of Carter Industries. But all she could think about was the secret growing inside her, and the man sitting across from her, who had no idea he was about to become a father. Julian watched her throughout the meeting, his expression unreadable. When their eyes met, she saw questions there, confusion, and something that looked dangerously like longing. The meeting ended with tentative agreements to continue discussions. As they gathered their documents, Julian spoke quietly. Miss Carter, might I have a word about the partnership terms? Her father nodded, already heading toward the door. 5 minutes, a wait in the lobby. The door closed, leaving them alone. The silence stretched, thick with everything unsaid. Alina, Julian said finally, her name sounding like a confession. I didn't know. That night, I had no idea who you were. Neither did I, she whispered. He took a step closer. Are you okay? You look pale. She wanted to tell him. The words burned in her throat, but fear held them back. Fear of his reaction, fear of making an impossible situation even more complicated, fear of losing this chance to save her father's company. I'm fine, she said instead. Just surprised. Julian studied her face, and she had the unsettling feeling he could see through her lies. But he simply nodded. We should continue these discussions, he said professionally. Your company deserves a fair chance. As Alina left his office, she pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the weight of secrets and the impossible future spreading out before her like uncharted territory. The following weeks became a careful dance of deception. Alina attended meeting after meeting with Julian and his team. Her body betraying her with waves of nausea, she had to hide behind coughs and sudden trips to the restroom. She carried crackers in her purse and wore looser blouses, praying no one would notice the changes. Julian noticed everything. You left the room 3 times during that presentation, he said one afternoon. Catching her in the hallway outside the conference room, they were alone, the rest of the teams having dispersed for lunch. I'm fine, Alina said automatically, the lie familiar on her tongue now. You're not. His voice was gentle but firm. Alina, what's going on? She looked up at him, at those gray eyes that had seen her vulnerable and real on that rooftop terrace. For a moment, she almost told him, but her father's voice echoed in her head, warning her that Blackwood Enterprises couldn't be trusted, that this merger was their only lifeline. Just stress, she said. This deal means everything to my family. Julian's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his voice dropping low. I think about that night constantly. I know we agreed it was just one evening, but seeing you again working with you, don't. Alina interrupted, her heart hammering. We can't. Our families, the business, everything is too complicated. Then uncomplicated, he said simply. Before she could respond, her father appeared at the end of the hallway. Alina, We need to review the financial projections. She fled, leaving Julian standing there with unfinished words hanging between them. The symptoms. Rebecca cornered Alina in her apartment that weekend. Her arms crossed and expression determined. Okay, enough. What's really going on? You've been weird for weeks. Alina sat on her couch, exhausted from another sleepless night. The secret felt like a physical weight on her chest. I'm pregnant, she whispered. Rebecca's eyes went wide. What? When? Who remembered the gala? The night I left early? Elena's voice cracked. I met someone. We spent the night together. I didn't get his name, Alina. Rebecca sat beside her, pulling her into a hug. What are you going to do? I don't know. Keep the baby, obviously. But telling my father, that's impossible right now. He's already falling apart over the company and the father. Elena's throat tightened. It's complicated. Really, really complicated. What she didn't say was that the father sat across from her in boardrooms 3 times a week, that his voice made her heart race, that she sometimes caught him watching her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, and understood all at once. The business dinner, 2 weeks later, Elena's father insisted on hosting a dinner to celebrate the progress in merger negotiations. Both families would attend. A symbolic gesture of unity between Carter and Blackwood, Elena dressed carefully in a flowing black dress that hid her slight bump, now noticeable to her even if invisible to others. She applied makeup to cover the dark circles under her eyes and practiced her smile in the mirror. The restaurant was exclusive, private, the kind of place where deals were made over expensive wine and carefully crafted courses. Elena arrived with her parents to find Julian already there with his father, Richard Blackwood. A silver-haired man with hard eyes and a calculating smile. Carter's, Richard said, standing to greet them. How wonderful to finally break bread together after all these years. The undercurrent of hostility was barely masked. These families had been competitors for decades, each viewing the other as the enemy. Elena felt it in every forced smile and stiff handshake. Julian caught her eye across the table. He looked uncomfortable in a way she'd never seen before. His usual confidence replaced by tension. Dinner progressed through multiple courses. Elena pushed food around her plate, managing small bites to avoid suspicion. When the waiter offered wine, she declined, asking for water instead. Not drinking? Richard Blackwood asked, his eyes sharp. That's unusual for a celebration. I'm driving, Elena lied smoothly, but Julian was watching her, really watching her, and she saw the moment understanding began to dawn in his eyes. The way she'd refused wine at every meeting. Her frequent bathroom trips. The exhaustion she couldn't quite hide. His face went pale. The truth explodes. Elena has been instrumental in these negotiations, her father was saying, oblivious to the silent conversation happening across the table. She has a brilliant mind for business. That's not all she has a mind for, apparently, Richard Blackwood said, his voice taking on a cruel edge. Tell me, Miss Carter, are you quite well? You look rather unwell for such a celebratory occasion. The table fell silent. Elena's mother reached over, touching her daughter's hand with concern. Julian's chair scraped back. Father, that's enough, is it? Richard's smile was sharp. Because I've been watching Julian. The way you look at her. The way she avoids your eyes. And I've done my research. You both disappeared from the Hastings Gala the same night. Neither of you were seen again until morning. Elena's father stood abruptly. What is he implying? I'm not implying anything, Richard said coldly. I'm stating facts. Your daughter and my son had an encounter. And unless I'm very much mistaken, there are consequences to that encounter. The restaurant seemed to tilt. Elena gripped the edge of the table, her breathing shallow. Her mother's hand tightened on hers. Is this true? Her father demanded, his voice shaking with rage and disbelief. Elena looked at Julian. He was standing now too, his face a mixture of shock and dawning realization. You're pregnant, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. The silence that followed felt crushing. Elena forced herself to nod, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. How dare you, her father exploded, pointing at Julian. You seduced my daughter as part of some sick game? To destroy us completely. I didn't know who she was, Julian said, his voice firm despite the chaos. Neither of us knew that night. Convenient story, Richard Blackwood sneered. Though I must say, Julian, getting the Carter girl pregnant is quite the strategic move. Now they're tied to us permanently. That's not what happened. Alina found her voice, standing on shaking legs. Nobody planned this. It just happened. Her father turned to her, his face red with fury and hurt. You've ruined everything. Do you understand that? Any partnership we make now will look like a forced arrangement. Our reputation, our name, everything I've worked for. Is that all you care about? Elena's voice cracked. Your reputation? I'm your daughter. I'm pregnant and scared, and all you can think about is your company. This is a disaster, her mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. Julian moved around the table toward Alina. We need to talk alone. Stay away from her, Alina's father snarled. I'm the father of her child, Julian said firmly. Whether you like it or not, that creates a connection between our families that goes beyond business. Richard Blackwood laughed, a harsh sound. Well, this has been enlightening. I suppose we'll need to adjust the merger terms to account for this. Development. There won't be a merger, Julian said, stunning everyone into silence. Not on your terms, father. Not anymore. Private words, the restaurant erupted into arguments. Alina felt dizzy, overwhelmed by voices and accusations flying around her. She grabbed her purse and fled toward the exit. Julian caught up with her in the parking lot. Alina, wait. She spun to face him, tears finally spilling over. Don't. Just don't. You heard them? Both our families think this is some terrible mistake or calculated plot. Maybe they're right, or not right, Julian said, grasping her shoulders gently. That night was real. What we shared was real. And this baby, his voice broke slightly. This baby is real. You didn't know, Elena said bitterly. You just found out. You don't have to pretend you want this. I'm not pretending. He pulled her closer, his forehead almost touching hers. I'm terrified. I don't know how to be a father. But I know I don't want to walk away. I couldn't even if I wanted to. Elena searched his eyes, looking for deception or duty or pity. Instead, she found something raw and honest. Your father will make this impossible. Then I'll deal with my father. But Julian's voice hardened. I'm done letting him control my life. I'm done with the way he does business, the way he treats people like chess pieces. If being a father means finally standing up to him, then that's what I'll do. And what about us? Alina whispered. We barely know each other. Then we learn, Julian said simply. We figure it out together. Unless you don't want that. If you want me to stay away, I will. But don't make that choice because you think it's what I want. Make it because it's what you want. Alina pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the flutter of new life inside her. She thought about raising this child alone, thought about partnership with a man she barely knew, thought about the impossible situation they'd stumbled into. I don't know what I want, she admitted. Everything is so complicated. Then we start simple, Julian said. Tomorrow, just you and me. No families, no business, no pressure. Let me take you to your next doctor's appointment. Let me be there. Elena hesitated, then nodded slowly. It wasn't a commitment to forever. It wasn't even a promise to try. But it was a step forward, and right now, that was all she could manage. As Julian walked her to her car, Alina looked back at the restaurant where their families were still probably arguing. Two powerful dynasties, connected now by the tiny life growing inside her. She didn't know how this story would end, but she knew it had fundamentally changed the moment those two pink lines appeared. Julian, she said as she opened her car door. I'm scared. He touched her cheek gently. So am I, but we'll figure it out. As she drove away, Alina caught sight of him in her rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot with his hands in his pockets, watching her go. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, she felt something besides fear and isolation. She felt hope. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Elena's bedroom as she prepared for her doctor's appointment. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the disastrous dinner and Julian's unexpected offer to accompany her. Part of her expected him to cancel, to come to his senses in the harsh light of day and realize how complicated this situation truly was. Her phone buzzed with a message. I'm outside. No pressure if you changed your mind. Lena looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired but determined. She grabbed her purse and headed downstairs. Julian stood beside a modest sedan, not the luxury car she'd expected. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, looking more like the man from the terrace than the corporate executive she'd been negotiating with. "You came?" she said, unable to hide her surprise. "I said I would." He opened the passenger door for her. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Alina admitted as she slid into the seat. "About the appointment, about everything." The drive to the medical center was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Julian didn't press her with questions or make promises he couldn't keep. He simply existed beside her, solid and present. The ultrasound DR. Patricia Morgan greeted them warmly in her office. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put Alina at ease. "So this is your first ultrasound?" Dr. Morgan asked, preparing the equipment. Alina nodded, lying back on the examination table. Julian stood awkwardly near the door until the doctor gestured for him to come closer. "You're the father?" Dr. Morgan asked casually. "Yes," Julian said, his voice firm despite his obvious nervousness. The gel was cold on Alina's stomach. Then the screen flickered to life, and suddenly there it was, a tiny shape with a rapidly beating heart, impossibly small and impossibly real. "There's your baby," Dr. Morgan said with a smile. About 10 weeks along, developing perfectly, Lena's eyes filled with tears. All the fear and confusion of the past weeks crystallized into this single moment. This tiny life depending on her, trusting her. Growing despite the chaos surrounding its creation, she felt Julian's hand find hers. When she glanced at him, she saw tears streaming down his face too. "That's our baby," he whispered in awe. "Alina, that's our baby." Dr. Morgan printed several ultrasound images and left them alone for a moment. Julian sat on the edge of the examination table, still holding Elena's hand. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "After dinner last night, I went home and pulled every file on the Carter Blackwood history. Every deal, every contract, every acquisition." Alina tensed. And my father has been sabotaging your company for years. The contracts that went wrong, the deals that fell through at the last minute, the suppliers who suddenly couldn't fulfill orders, it was all orchestrated." His voice was heavy with shame. "I didn't know. I was too focused on my division to see what he was doing." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm going to fix it," Julian said firmly. "I've already started transferring assets out of my father's control. I'm creating an independent fund, and the first thing it's going to do is invest properly in Carter Industries. No strings attached, no hidden agendas. Just what's fair and right." Alina studied his face. "Your father will destroy you for that." "Probably," Julian agreed. "But I'd rather be destroyed trying to do the right thing than continue being complicit in his corruption. This baby," he gestured to the ultrasound image, "this baby deserves parents who have integrity, even if everything else is a mess." Family confrontations that evening, Alina returned home to find her parents waiting in the living room. Her father's face was still red with anger, but her mother's expression was softer. "Worried, we need to talk about this situation," her father began. "There's nothing to discuss," Alina said calmly, settling into a chair. "I'm keeping the baby. Julian has offered to be involved, and I'm going to let him try." "That's my decision. You're throwing your life away," her father said bitterly. "For what? A one-night mistake with our enemy's son?" "He's not our enemy," Alina said. "And this baby isn't a mistake. Maybe the circumstances weren't ideal, but this child is going to be loved. That's what matters." Her mother spoke up for the first time. "Alina, sweetheart, we're just worried about you. Raising a child with someone you barely know? Someone from that family, then get to know him," Alina interrupted. "Or don't. But I'm not going to let family grudges dictate my child's life. I'm not going to raise my baby in an atmosphere of hatred and resentment." Her father stood abruptly. "I can't support this." "I'm not asking for your support," Alina said, her voice breaking slightly. "But I am asking for your understanding. I'm still your daughter. This baby will be your grandchild. Don't throw that away because of pride." And she left them sitting in silence and retreated to her room, where she allowed herself to finally cry not from sadness, but from the weight of choosing her own path, despite everyone's expectations. Julian's stand across town. Julian faced his own reckoning. He'd requested a meeting with his father in the study of the Blackwood family estate, a room that had witnessed decades of ruthless business decisions. Resigning from Blackwood Enterprises, Julian announced without preamble. Effective immediately. Richard Blackwood looked up from his desk, his expression calculating. Because of the Carter girl? Because of who you are and what this company represents, Julian corrected. I've spent the last 24 hours reviewing everything. The bribes, the sabotage, the deliberate destruction of competitors. I won't be part of it anymore. You're being naive, his father said dismissively. This is how business works at our level. The strong survive, the weak perish. The Carters weren't weak. You deliberately targeted them because they competed with integrity, and that threatened your methods. Julian placed a folder on the desk. I've documented everything. I'm also taking my trust fund in my division of the company. The lawyers have already processed the paperwork. Richard's face darkened with rage. You'd betray your own family for some girl you barely know? I'm not betraying anyone. I'm choosing to be someone my child can be proud of. Julian moved toward the door. And for the record, she's not just some girl. Her name is Alina, and she's going to be the mother of your grandchild. You can choose to be part of that child's life with respect and decency, or you can continue your vendetta. But you can't do both. The park meeting 3 days later, Julian texted Alina with a simple invitation. Meet me at Riverside Park. There's something I want to show you. Alina found him sitting on a bench overlooking the river, a folder beside him. The autumn leaves were falling around them, painting the world in shades of gold and crimson. I brought the ultrasound pictures, she said, sitting beside him. I thought you might want copies. I already got some from Dr. Morgan, Julian admitted, pulling out his wallet. He showed her the tiny image tucked behind his driver's license. I look at it constantly. Still can't quite believe it's real. Lena felt warmth spread through her chest. What did you want to show me? Julian opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, business proposals, and detailed financial plans. This is the reparation fund I mentioned. It's already operational. The first payment to Carter Industries processes tomorrow, enough to cover your immediate debts and start new projects. Julian, I can't. It's not charity, he interrupted gently. It's restitution for what my father did. Your company deserves to thrive on its own merits. He pulled out another document. And this is a trust fund for our baby. Fully funded, managed by independent trustees. Whatever happens between us, our child will always be secure. Elena's hands trembled as she looked at the papers. You did all this in 3 days? I had help. Lawyers, accountants, people who've been waiting for someone to stand up to my father. Julian turned to face her fully. Alina, I know we started this backward. We had the night together, then the baby, and now we're trying to figure out if there's something real between us. But I want you to know, even if we never become more than co-parents, I'm committed to doing this right. What if I want more? Alina asked softly. Julian's eyes widened. What? I've been thinking about that night, Alina continued, her heart racing. Not just the physical part, but the conversation on the terrace. How easy it was to talk to you, how seen I felt. And these past weeks, even with all the chaos, there are moments when I look at you and remember why I said yes that night. Alina, his voice was rough with emotion. I'm not saying I'm ready for some grand romance, she clarified quickly, but maybe we don't have to have everything figured out. Maybe we just take it one day at a time and see what develops naturally. Julian reached for her hand. I'd like that. More than you know? They sat in comfortable silence, watching the river flow past. After a while, Alina shifted slightly. What's wrong? Julian asked immediately. Nothing's wrong. The baby just moved, Alina smiled. It's still small, just little flutters, but do you want to feel? Julian nodded, his expression reverent. Alina guided his hand to the side of her stomach where she'd felt the movement. They waited quietly, and then it happened, a tiny flutter against his palm. Was that? Julian's voice cracked. That was your son or daughter saying hello, Alina whispered. Julian's composure finally shattered. He pulled Alina into his arms, holding her carefully as tears streamed down his face. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. Thank you for letting me be part of this. Alina held him back, feeling something shift inside her that had nothing to do with the baby. This man who'd been a stranger and then an enemy and now was becoming something else entirely felt like home in a way she hadn't expected. 6 months later, the nursery was finally complete. Soft yellow walls, white furniture, and a mobile of stars and moons hanging over the crib. Alina stood in the doorway, one hand on her very pregnant belly. Watching Julian assemble the changing table, "I think we have enough diapers now," she said with amusement. Eyeing the stockpile in the corner, Julian looked up with a grin. "Better to many than not enough. I've been reading all the books apparently. Babies go through an insane number of diapers." Their relationship had grown slowly, carefully, like a plant that needed the right conditions to flourish. They'd had dinners together, long walks, countless conversations about everything from parenting philosophies to their favorite childhood memories. There had been setbacks, 2 arguments about family involvement, disagreements about the birth plan, moments when their different backgrounds created friction, but they'd worked through each challenge. Learning to communicate, to compromise, to build something neither of them had planned but both now cherished. "My parents are coming to dinner tomorrow," Alina said. "My dad finally agreed to meet with you properly." Julian stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "How do you feel about that? Nervous? Hopeful?" Alina moved into the room, letting Julian wrap his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her belly. "He's been softening lately. I think the idea of meeting his grandchild is stronger than his grudge." "And my father?" "Still hasn't called," Julian admitted quietly. "But that's his loss. Our child will have plenty of love without him." Lena turned in his arms to face him. "I love you," she said simply. It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but each time still felt significant. Still felt like a choice she was making consciously and willingly. "I love you too," Julian replied, kissing her softly. "Both of you." The baby kicked vigorously, making them both laugh. "I think someone's excited," Elena said. The birth 3 weeks later at 2 in the morning, Elena's water broke. The drive to the hospital was a blur of contractions, and Julian's steady voice reminding her to breathe. His hand never leaving hers. Labor was long and difficult. 18 hours of pain and exhaustion with Julian beside her the entire time, offering ice chips and encouragement and his unwavering presence. When their daughter finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Alina was too exhausted to do anything but weep with relief and joy. "She's perfect," the nurse said, placing the tiny, squirming bundle on Elena's chest. "Absolutely perfect." Julian leaned over them both, his face wet with tears. "She has your nose," he whispered in awe. "When your eyes," Elena replied, studying the tiny face pressed against her skin. "Have you decided on a name?" The nurse asked. Alina and Julian looked at each other. They discussed dozens of options, but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at their daughter, Alina knew. "Hope," she said softly. "Her name is Hope." Julian nodded, understanding immediately. This child, born from an unexpected night in complicated circumstances, represented hope for new beginnings, for healing old wounds, for love that grew in unexpected places. 1 year later, the first birthday party was a modest affair in Elena's parents' backyard. Both families had come. Though Richard Blackwood had sent only a card and a substantial check, his own complicated way of acknowledging his granddaughter's existence, Hope toddled across the grass on unsteady legs, giggling as Julian chased her. Alina watched from the porch, her heart full in a way she'd never imagined possible. Her father approached, settling into the chair beside her. They'd rebuilt their relationship slowly. And while things would never be exactly as they were before, there was a new understanding between them. "She's beautiful," he said gruffly, watching his granddaughter. "You did good, sweetheart." "We did good," Alina corrected, nodding toward Julian. Our father admitted. "I was wrong about him." "He's nothing like his father," Alina smiled. "No, he's not." Julian caught her eye from across the yard and smiled back. That same smile that had first drawn her to him on a hotel terrace what felt like a lifetime ago. He was everything she hadn't known she needed. Patient, kind, committed, and deeply in love with both her and their daughter. Their story hadn't started like a fairy tale. There'd been no love at first sight, no grand romantic gestures in the beginning. Just 2 broken people finding comfort in each other for one night, and then choosing, again and again, to keep finding each other despite every obstacle. But maybe that was better than a fairy tale. Because this was real messy and complicated and absolutely worth every struggle. As the sun set and the party wound down, Alina sat with Hope in her lap and Julian's arm around her shoulders. This was her family, built not on expectations or business arrangements or family legacies, but on love that had grown organically from the most unexpected beginning. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked quietly. Alina looked at him, at their daughter, at the life they'd built together. "I'm thinking that sometimes the best things come from the moments we least expect. That night on the terrace, I was running away from my life. Now I can't imagine any other life but this one." Julian kissed her temple. "Neither can I." Hope babbled something incomprehensible and reached for her father's face. As Julian scooped her up, making her shriek with delight, Alina felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. They hadn't destroyed their families. Instead, they'd created something new, a bridge between two warring dynasties, built on the foundation of an innocent child who carried both their names and neither of their grudges. The secret that could have destroyed both families had instead saved them, teaching everyone involved that love was always stronger than pride, that forgiveness was more powerful than revenge, and that sometimes the biggest mistakes led to the greatest blessings. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, Alina held her family close and thanked whatever force had brought that stranger to a hotel terrace on a night when she needed escape. She'd found so much more than that. She'd found herself, found love, found hope. And in the end, that was the only story that mattered. The Eon D. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with trumpets and roses. Sometimes it arrives quietly, unexpectedly, in the middle of chaos and confusion. And sometimes those are the loves that last forever because they were built not on fantasy, but on the courage to choose each other, day after day, despite everything working against them. Alina and Julian's story reminds us that family isn't just about blood or business or legacy. It's about the people we choose to stand beside, the lives we build together, and the love we give freely even when it's hard. Their daughter Hope would grow up knowing that her parents' love story wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real, in the end, is always better than perfect.